There are two aspects of creation. That which is always moving and that which is still. And nearly everything we call life and refer to and talk about is part of the moving world. And yet here and now, again, let's come back to recognizing what is present here. There is that which is still. It's just the same as it was yesterday, isn't it? And guess what? The day before, and even before this house was built, or even Bakewell was built. It's here inside this house, it's out on the street, it's up on the hills, it's in all your homes, and it's within us too, both within us and without us. That doesn't change. Well, you asked the question, does the spirit move us? Well, that's just debatable. That's just a play on words, really. What exactly do we mean? Depends whether you see spirit in terms of its movability or its immovable. You can see it as if you just come down from that pure presence a bit, just sort of come down a step or a few steps into what we call creation, and of course you come into the moving world where things begin to, the sort of first primal vibrations of creation, which then gradually separate out and form all the different manifest forms we're familiar with. And then we begin to see cause and effect come into operation. There all sorts of things happen. The mind is infinitely capable of coming up with all sorts of sensations and interrelated one things and another. And indeed they say that with God all things are possible. So anything can happen. I mean, look how different we all are, our different habits, and look how our heads are moving now, at least mine is, and you know, our eyes are all blinking. All these things are just happening, aren't they? And the trouble with trying to sort of burrow into and understand these things too much is that you get lost there. I don't know. And you can speak and go to some clever people who think they know and, you know, work it all out on a computer, what makes your head go down, and come up with clever answers, but so what? You know? It's just that sort of realm of knowledge of more and more, of less and less. Where's it going to get you, ultimately? So just take it with a pinch of salt, dear. And it's much easier to go through life not knowing than trying to have all the answers. Keep it simple. The principle of meditation is that we let go, you see, of everything, which includes the things we know and label and thoughts and all that. And we discover the nameless and thoughtless. Yes, as the cars pass on the road, all these things are contained, aren't they, with no conflict. It's just two aspects of the changing and the unchanging. Movement and rest. And incidentally, this is one of the principal instructions I received as a young man from my school of meditation. When we were asked, what's it for? We were told, your job, i.e. in the world, is to provide the rest. It's worth remembering that when we're faced with this persistent question, what shall I do? So often the world sort of compels us to get active and get involved. But you see how starved the world is of this simple element of peace or rest. That's why we are restless. That's why the world is restless, why politics is restless, why all our social welfare is plagued by this restlessness. And starved for rest, not just that sort of slump in bed, but the deep, deep, deep rest, even beyond, in the deepest sort of mental rest, where the mind is at rest. It's rather interesting that on the YouTube channel, so many people say they use these videos to go to sleep with. In fact, I suspect that this whole ASMR thing is really just that, isn't it? Because people want peace, don't they? People want rest. But typically we tend to connect it with, a pretty girl and candles and a soft voice and that sort of thing. We want something as a means to providing this. Like so many people meditate with some gadget, chanting or something like that. But actually, these things are just, preliminary. May not be useful to some people, but really it's utterly simple. You don't need any intermediate clutter. It's just here, isn't it? Pure, simple rest. Your job is to provide the rest. And incidentally, while one is at rest, you just bring to mind those of your acquaintances who are disturbed and are not at rest. All the worried, screwed up people that we come across in our daily lives. And just let them be contained in this all-embracing rest. You see how practical it is? Because this rest isn't just confined to this room, is it? It's not our rest. It's when we just stop getting in the way. When we just step aside and let this rest be. And as the saying is, God holds the whole world in his hand. The whole world's at peace. And one begins to understand the significance of prayer, which is really more powerful than any number of psychological courses trying to understand this and that about what makes us tick. This is why we call it work. This is real work in a restless world to provide the rest. Which of course is also, in another sense, the missing dimension, isn't it? The rest. We've got everything about except the one thing that matters, which of course is this indefinable, not advertised rest. The rest with which we are complete. To make whole, be whole. This presence, let's just consider a few more words, is almighty, isn't it? Almighty and most merciful God. So all human failure is completed by surrender into this. By sort of melting into this, into thy hands. It's this surrender that is the essence of meditation, really, prayer. In fact, of all religious endeavour, isn't it? To find this unity with God. We are already unified. We're already in it, aren't we? As you can feel for yourselves this morning, like fishes in the sea. We've just got to stop thinking we're not. That's the only barrier, is that this idea in our heads is that, where is God? Like the little fish going to the old wise fish saying, where is the ocean? The one, that's what it means, isn't it? The one verse, the one song, the one outpouring of creation. And so as long as we hold to this rest, you see, it is one, isn't it? Like there's one person in this room, one indescribable oneness in this room, in which everything's contained. Where does it stop? It contains everything, doesn't it? The universe. You know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, dear, and we see the world differently all the time, don't we? Some days it's awful, other days it's wonderful. Some days it's all as you describe, but then so just accept that's how it is for you today, and if you're interested, make a note about it, and tomorrow it'll be something else. Yeah. But I'm all for making notes of these things. Those of you that read my books will know that they consist of just a long series of notes of different sort of observations like that. They'll be of interest to you if no one else as you look back on your life. But try not to make an absolute out of them. They're just part of the changing scene, aren't they? Like autumn, spring. This morning, I think it was while we were meditating, exactly the same thought came to me. And nearly everything I've written, nearly all that we were talking, yes, I felt a bit embarrassed really that we were talking about my books. I thought we were giving it too much importance while we were having tea yesterday. Rather wished we hadn't anyway. And I thought all that, nearly everything that's being published now was written between sort of 20 and 40 years ago. When I suppose I was in a much more verbal time of my life than I am now. And now it's so evident to me that the real communication isn't in words. It's through silence. I really do feel, when you all go away, if any of you are kind enough to write to me, I'll receive your message and I'll wonder how to answer. But I'll know that sitting there just wondering what to say, that I'm more closely connected to you through this presence, you see, through just being present, which is the real communication in the sense of union, isn't it? The real communion, the sense of that spiritual oneness. That however much we fumble about trying to find the right words to say to each other, this spiritual communion is perfect, isn't it? It goes, you can say heart to heart, but it's even more than that, really. It's the real communion. And that's why I'm so confident that just spending hours and hours sitting completely useless in the church there, that actually, you know, I really do believe the less of me, the more of God, that in this surrender to this oneness, that somehow all that is necessary is achieved, because it's this total trust in the one who, the Almighty and most merciful, which you see nourishes every heart as is appropriate. Every heart. You know, a million miles beyond anything that you and I are capable of. And he feeds us in secret, you see, in the depth of every heart.